Is Arcade OneUp shutting down? That's what one longtime Redditor claims. And yeah, he brought receipts. All right, guys, welcome to James Hates Everything in this impromptu breaking news. What do we say here? Let's see. I know I have one of these. As always, prepared as always.
Breaking news from the Arcade News Network.
All right, in all seriousness, we have a interesting thread pop up on Reddit, of course, the Arcade OneUp subreddit, just a little over an hour ago. And I'm going to add this here to the stage for you guys so we can take a look at it. And of course, this Redditor claims, as you see here, that Arcade OneUp is shutting down. He says, "Hi, all, beta tester team, and I just received word that Arcade OneUp is shutting down. This is a huge shock as we have purchased several Arcade OneUp products and love them. My mind is spinning as to why they couldn't stay afloat. I have a question for the team. If any of them is still on here, can you open source the software so we can continue to update and repurpose our devices?" So Shawnee 187 is the Redditor here, and I need to give a quick shout out to Decadent Dave who brought this thread to my attention a little while ago. So appreciate the heads up. It's pretty interesting, right? On the surface, there's not a lot here. Claims to be a beta tester, doesn't really have anything to build on it. But I did kind of want to point out here that this isn't just some new Redditor that's come on to troll people. You see, he's got a 14-year history on Reddit. And as you scan through some of his posts throughout the history, they're not a bunch of trolling posts. They're all pretty serious. This is an older gentleman with children and stuff like that. So you can see here, this isn't your typical troll. Or somebody trying to manipulate. And of course, this should all be treated as rumor, as speculation, because this is the source of this information, this one Redditor post. But as I mentioned, we do have some receipts. So we'll get into those receipts in just a second, but I wanted to give a shout out. And no, Danny, it's not a new mic. I just usually have it below, and I wanted to change things up a bit and raise it up. We'll see how it works and goes. Typically don't like to have the mic in the video or in the camera, but I wanted to get it up there anyway. So shout out to Josh Dindy, who was first. We have JJ, Thumper Squid, Devastator Omega is here. Marine 50, thanks for joining us. Of course, the Cornercade. I know I saw a lot of you. Mike Hockhurts is in here. The moderator extraordinaire who's on call at a moment's notice to just pop in when the alert goes off. There's Decadent Dave himself right here in there. Says basic fun buyout, no doubt. We will see. We got Rodox. Thanks for joining us. Fat Hog is here. Rob Cat. Unchained 81. The Arcades Anonymous channel is here. Sir Sega, Saved by Zero, Show Gecko, nice to see you. King Ed, Cyan Spirits, and Chaotic. So thanks everybody for dropping by. As I said, so let's just get right to, we could go through this thread. It's just a bunch of random people, but we come down here and we do have this image, and I'll bring it up in a little better view for you real quick. Gotta stop screen share and grab the right window. All right, so now we can blow this up and take a closer look. So again, this is a screenshot of an email. And you can see he's kind of blocked out part of their names. Sent today, 6:36. You can see the clips from Google, claims to be from Arcade OneUp. And I'm going to say claims because really, you know, it wouldn't be too hard to manipulate an image. So keep that in mind. But this is was posted by Shawnee187, and it says beta team, and we don't get the whole email here. We only get part of it. So that's another team thing. It says beta team, I come to you with news I wish I didn't have to share. Arcade One Up is closing operations. For the majority of us, our last day is this coming Friday. I cannot speak to the future of the brand. It is not my place to share what might be next and whom will be in charge of it. So that seems to be hinting at a possible maybe transition or buyout or move. Says, I do not know the plans for the arcade systems or the infinity tables. I believe that they will continue to operate as they currently do, but I do not know for certain. Well, then the email kind of stops here. There's no signature. It's unclear if it continues after this. So it doesn't look super professional. If this is an official email, it's hard to say. Obviously, you can see part of the person's name ends in looks like LA or DA or something on here. It's hard to say. But there's the receipts, right? This is what Shawnee claims, and I'm going to bring back up the to that so we can take a look at that real quick, because he had some additional information here, right? He says, you can see it's Shawnee right here. Somebody says just paste the email. So about 37, or now it's probably been 45 minutes to 50 minutes ago. Shawnee187 posts the email and he says, I was trying to be kind of covert about it until they made an official statement. Here is a photo, especially since I signed an NDA for beta testers. So it's pretty interesting. So he's claiming he's sharing it, even though he has an NDA. But if they are ceasing operations, who knows? So pretty interesting. I just wanted to bring this to your attention if you haven't seen it already. I've been watching this closely ever since the initial rumors came out. And Stock Jock jumped in here and says, does that mean that James Hates Everything is now going to go after the one-up assets and try to make them great again? Well, you never know. You never know. So ever since the rumors of a potential buyout, I've been really trying to follow this pretty closely, trying to get any indication of any kind of buyout or anything. And to date, there's been nothing really substantial. The biggest thing you have is the CEO leaving in September at some time officially. That was became official on their LinkedIn a little over a week ago. Aside from that, there hasn't been much. I mean, there's been recent shipments. I think the latest shipment from Arcade OneUp came in towards the end of November. Obviously, they've been pretty active in their advertising, and I'm just checking right now their Instagram, because come to think of it, I don't think I saw any Instagram videos today from them, which is unusual. But they up until then, we've been seeing a series of posts and things like that from Arcade One Up official, and yeah, I mean that's interesting. There's not any reels today, so take that for what you want. If it is like they're not on the Arcade One Up official. Very interesting. So, yeah, that's something else. Is suddenly they're silent on TikTok and Instagram. Arcades Anonymous, of course, saying smash that like button. But aside from the CEO departing, there's not really been anything else other than this rumor until this. Obviously, we don't know who Shawnee is. He doesn't seem to be a troll. No clue telling if he has any relationships or not, or if this is accurate. He did provide some screenshots, so treat it with some skepticism, but obviously it's some additional information that kind of compounds based on that rumor. It could also be a result of that rumor if this person suddenly wants to spread information falsely. Now, I'm not saying they're doing that. I, again, don't know this person. There certainly, as I said before, the Reddit history seems legit, not a lot of garbage in it. It's just a dude being a dude on Reddit. So, um, it, there's no red flags for me jumping out that says that this is potentially somebody that is just trying to troll people. But again, anything can happen. So you got to treat it with speculation. So some of the other things I've been following, I've been looking at filings for tastemakers for Arcade OneUp in Florida, in New York, which is their official business reference. Been looking for any indication from basic fund shipments, any changes in shippers of items, any changes in trademarks, nothing. And nothing has changed. So if there is any kind of buyout, literally nothing has happened as of yet, not publicly that you can see. Now there is, and I was talking with um, Jim the Pacers fan about this earlier today. There is a fairly new employee at Arcade OneUp, joined in April, the chief revenue officer, who brags about being able to negotiate a business sale and cut Arcade OneUp's costs by like 30% and adjust to inflation. There's a bunch of little buzzwords on there about how he's streamlined, and that's the job of a chief revenue officer. And right away, you might be tempted to well, it says he negotiated a business sale, which makes it sound like potentially he could be talking about the sale of. As you dig into it, you'll see in that person's history, he actually worked for many, many years at Solutions to Go. And if you guys have been following along here, Solutions to Go is the current distributor of Arcade OneUp. And they began shipping Arcade OneUp about the same time that this CRO came on at Arcade OneUp. And that's a big deal because what we do know is towards the late half of 2024, Arcade OneUp and Alliance Entertainment signed an exclusive distribution deal. In fact, Alliance Entertainment is a publicly traded company and announced pretty boldly about this exclusive arrangement. It's a big deal. It's part of what their business model is having these exclusive distribution relationships with video games and music producers and film out. So they make a big deal about this, which is why they did a big press release. In fact, if you still go to their website, they still say Arcade OneUp is an exclusive brand that they distribute, and they've never officially announced that they no longer are the exclusive distributor of Arcade OneUp. Yet, nothing has shipped through Alliance Entertainment, Arcade OneUp to Alliance Entertainment in that time, since like that early 2025 time, like somewhere between February and April. I don't remember the exact date. And you can see this by evidence of places that get Arcade OneUps through Kokum, which is Alliance Entertainment's distribution unit, like Nebraska Furniture Mart. They are down to only one cap. They have one Pac-Man. That's it. Like all the others have sold through, they're gone, like, and they're not getting more in, right? Which shows like, hey, they haven't been getting distributions through Solutions to Go. But Solutions to Go has been out there publicly talking about relationships with Best Buy and others. And so they're still distributing Arcade OneUp to the same companies they have been, because Solutions to Go has those same arrangements, other than somebody like Nebraska Furniture Mart, which I mentioned. And so in all likelihood, that quote unquote business sale that the CRO negotiated was probably, again, this is just a guess based on what we can see from the outside, was most likely the sale of the distribution exclusivity from Alliance Entertainment to Solutions to Go. With that would include things, presumably, like inventory. So probably part of the deal was the backstock and inventory. relationships and contracts with the retailers. So they likely would have acquired those kinds of things. And of course, that exclusive relationship itself. And so, more than likely, that's what he is referencing. In fact, it literally says the business sale and reducing distribution costs by 30%. So, and the fact that he worked at Solutions to Go for like 15 years before coming to Arcade One Up really makes it seems like that's the business sale he was talking about. So again, no real evidence of an acquisition having already occurred publicly. So just a lot of smoke and rumor. And so it's hard to know how to take this, right? Because this could be anybody behind Shawnee 187. It could be somebody just like jumping on because there's been posts about Arcade One Up potentially being acquired. But again, went to the steps of manufacturing an email. I don't know, possibly, but again, there's nothing in his Reddit history that would make me think that this person would do that. So, again, have to treat it as rumor, but you're starting to get a lot of little things that might be pointing to indeed something is going on at Arcade One Up. And I just find it really interesting, right? Because the Arcade One Up folks, I've been reaching out to them repeatedly, different ones, for quite a while for anything. And you can't even get a no comment from somebody or that's not true, or a non-denial denial, right? Nothing. And usually when a company like that goes completely silent like they have been, that's a battening. We're not talking publicly because something is brewing. Again, that's just an assumption on my part. I don't have an evidence of that. All I can say is I've reached out to the typical channels and get nothing back. And I've tried to reach out to atypical channels and get nothing back. So could be they just hate James hates everything, but and I wouldn't blame him. But it is interesting because usually I do get something back when I reach out to them. So I don't know. There's a lot of smoke. Been kind of interested in what you guys think. I posted that poll out there, and it looks like 80% of you believe. Well, now it's 77%. I'll just go ahead and end the poll. 77% of you believe, yep, there's probably something up, and they are shutting down. If they are shutting down this soon, being the end of this week, as the email claims. I mean, that's kind of rough timing right before the holidays for a lot of people. That would be unfortunate if that's what's happening. Maybe it works out for them timing wise, but yeah, I mean, King Ed brings up here maybe the SpongeBob claw machine will be a collector's item in a few years. I mean, that's what I have to wonder is like they've had some pretty decent releases this year. Like, whether you like them from a recreation standpoint or not, the Pac-Man Neon Edition has been pretty popular. And me personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I have to admit, like when it's in black light and dark, that thing is awesome looking. You had the SpongeBob claw machine, which I think is just an absolute home run. I think it appears like it's been selling really well. And then you even have the T2. I know that was fairly popular, even though it was a slimmer edition. And so they've had 3 pretty good releases. And I would bet the Big Buck Hunter from earlier in the year, the Camouflage Mossy Oak edition, probably did pretty well. And so it's not like they've had a lot of missteps this year. While they haven't released near what they have in the past, they have been releasing stuff. Now, the classic SEs are what they are. Clearly, those are some cost-cutting measures. But there's no huge red flags to me that indicated that they were really on the brink of something bad because they're just shipping stuff like crazy. There's just been nothing big. In fact, I think it's only been a couple days since they sent out a marketing email around the Infinity game table. So it's also possible like the day-to-day people didn't know that it was this close or whatever was happening. And so maybe they just recently, if it's happened, are now kind of like, okay, let's go into our huddle mode, and but it really feels to me like there's been no real indications from Arcade One Up themselves that actually something is up, aside from the CEO stepping down and no new announcement of a CEO, which could be easily explained that they just haven't made a decision yet, or they're being run by the uh, Davin, who was named as previously as a co-CEO with the the person who ultimately became the CEO and is now no longer with there. It's just, for me, there's no super big evidence. This post would amount to the biggest evidence we have that something is really happening. And again, it's a post on the internet with a picture of an email, all of which can be easily faked. So again, not saying there's anything there's also not any real proof either until we get, and what do we what do people like to say in this space? It's not official till it's official. But it is certainly interesting. Yeah, you're right. Like you can't ignore the fact that Cyrus left for basic fun. um there's lots of reasons that I can think of with why somebody would do that. Remember, title wise, it's a step down. He went from vice president to just a director of licensing to a company that already has a bunch of licensing. So at the time, the people I was talking to about it, it could be as simple as basic funds like, hey, we have an opportunity. Again, they're all in Florida, right? Like basic funds in Boca, Tastemakers is in Florida, Cyrus is in Florida. you know, Cyrus saw an opportunity or got recruited by Basic Fun because he has inside information, right? Basic Fun is trying to go head to head with Arcade One Up. It would make sense to pilfer some of their senior leadership to get that brain drain and find out more about how they're doing things and what they were doing and what they were up to. So there's always that strategy of it that can explain why Cyrus would have left. It's just common. I mean, you see it with Meta went around and was buying engineers from OpenAI and from Google Gemini, just paying them insane amounts of money for their data scientists and AI so that they would come over to Meta and help Meta like fast track their AI. And most of them almost immediately left Meta and went back to where they were. But it's a common business practice, right? You go headhunt your competitor to get the inside information and help boost yours, get you moving faster. And so you think of how much money you can save in research and failed things. Like what would Basic Fund's launch have been like if they hired Cyrus a year ago, right? And he could have said, "You're on the wrong track with some of these. This is what you're going to have to do for them to actually sell." And some of those mistakes that they made with the going cheap on the coin door and the speaker grills and not having some of the right things, like he could have helped them like avoid all of that. And I know we like to pick on our boy Cyrus here, but that's simply not most of that isn't his fault. Like he's the guy trying to get the licenses. He was the guy that was the front of the company for a while after John left, so naturally he took the arrows, but he's the licensing guy. And he heard from all of us. He paid attention to all of us. He knew what the community wanted. He likely got overruled by people like their CEO, who was more concerned with pinching pennies and getting costs down. I mean, obviously, bringing in the CRO like they did was obviously a giant strategic move to conserve cash. That's the other thing. Obviously, we've seen evidence that Arcade One Up was having finance problems for the last 2 years, whether that was um, the accounts receivable loans or the going exclusive with Alliance Entertainment. There was lots of evidence that there were cash flow issues at Arcade One Up, and maybe those they just can't overcome those. But for me, it's a bit if this is true, it's extremely unfortunate because I still firmly believe that Arcade One Up they're in the driver's seat. They just got an award, like literally like 2 months ago, an award for selling through Shopify over 100,000 orders in 1 month through Shopify. That means through their website. That doesn't mean through retailers. That doesn't mean through Best Buy's storefront. Like 100,000 sales in 1 month now this was like November of 2024. The award was like a year later. But still, that's a ton of momentum going into 2025 to think just on their website alone, they sold over 100,000 products. And we know what they sell. They sell arcades and infinity game tables. They don't have their items on their website. So that's huge because you got to think their sales through the retailers are way higher than what they're selling direct through their website. And so I just don't see how you can move that much product and still find yourself losing money. But with who knows, with all the tariffs and things, maybe they just didn't cut costs enough. They ate those costs. They're still selling all of our cabs. All their retail cabs are still being sold at that $4.99 price. You haven't seen any price increases. All you've seen is maybe some reduction in the slimness or the reworking the classic SEs for those peasantcade ones. Like, you haven't seen too much effort from them to truly cut costs. And they've been shipping in Fast and Furious cabs as fast as they can make them. Claw machines sell out as fast as they can make them. Like, it's pretty interesting, like, how much product they're moving for them to be just, oh, we're just done. Especially coming out of, what was it, IGN Live, where they announced that, not officially, but through YouTubers that they have a new license for next year. So, like, what's going on with that if they were shutting down? Just lots of questions, lots of questions. So, Evil Genius, we don't know that they sold. What we have is a Redditor who claims he's a beta tester for Arcade One Up, and they notified the beta team that Arcade One Up is shutting down and that for most of their employees, Friday is the last day. He shared the email here. So as a quick recap for those joining late. And that's really all we know, right? So it's all still rumor. It's it is what it is. This guy could be pulling all of our chains. Doesn't seem to have a history of that, but you never know. But that's what that's all we know right now. So Decadent Day says you don't take out a $20 million cash infusion loan because you are in the red. Yeah, I mean, those kinds of loans are solely about cash flow. And so, like, you do that because you don't want to wait for the money. You already have the order. What they're selling is accounts receivables. They're orders that people already owe on. And so they're money that's owed Arcade One Up. And so what they do is say, well, instead of waiting for the terms for the retailer, the distributor to pay in 30, 60, 90 days, I want the money as quickly as possible. So I'll go to this company, they'll give me the money now, and then when we collect, we will pay that money to the lender with a small interest markup, right, for their effort. And oftentimes they're the ones that other firm, if somebody doesn't pay, they're the ones that go collect it. And so it's pretty common in manufacturing, especially for companies to do those kinds of receivables loans, just simply because you need funds to feed the next order, right? Like, you have a couple of options you can do. You can do like New Wave Toys, where they do pre-orders to get the money to fund the order. You can do options where you get a purchase order from a large company retailer like say Walmart and ask them to fund the purchase order, and they'll do this for some companies where they front you the money so that you can go get the manufacturing done and bring the product in. There's obviously getting a loan, which is really how Arcade One Up really did their first few years of cabs, right? They had a large venture loan come in that they used to then fund all their projects and all their initiatives for a long time. And obviously, that money dried up. And when that money dried up, they still had cash flow issues. And that's why they turned to the receivables loan, which is all really common practice. Of course, once you get sizable enough, the idea is like a bigger company, somebody like Hasbro, let's say, you're big enough at this point that you can self fund a lot of this stuff. You have the cash reserves, or you can issue stock or bonds to fund it and go do it. But Arcade One Up isn't a publicly traded company. They don't have that option. They could go out for another loan, but if they still owe on the first one, that's likely not to happen. That's why you have a secured loan like a accounts receivable loan that doesn't take a huge credit. You're buying stuff that's liquid anyway, so it's easier to get those loans. So it's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of just business 101 kind of stuff with cash flow and those things. So I don't think that's a real sign that they're in major trouble by any means. It may just be that they manage cash flow poorly. The guy who, the CRO that came in and renegotiated distribution, likely got them out from under any kind of repayment issues where, we know their early days, one of the biggest reasons they had cash crunch issues is because they promised Walmart and these companies a certain return on their cab. And when those companies sold them off dirt cheap for $50 or $100, Arcade One Up had to make up the difference. So Arcade One Up was paying them to sell their cabs, which is like obviously not what you want to do. That's a bad bet when you overproduce cabs like Arcade One Up had previously done. So that obviously caused them, among other reckless spending, like renting out areas in NFL stadiums, just reckless spending, cash grabs, those kinds of things. Just they thought the good times would never end, and they spent like that they weren't. Not really planning for a rainy day, but so it's interesting. I just wanted to bring that guy to you guys quick. There's not a lot to talk about. Assuming A1Up was deep in debt, I'd expect a liquidation bankruptcy. Hard to find a buyer to take on all that debt. I agree, King Ed. I've kind of talked about this before. Like, I would expect Arcade One Up to declare bankruptcy or Tastemakers first. But if they did negotiate a private equity sale behind the scenes, you might not necessarily see or even hear about that. It's a private company. Basic Fun is a private company. Going off the rumors, right? There could have easily been an equity swap behind the scenes. It could be that the holder literally could have been the finance company that holds the note on that loan that they had, sold their equity. And it's just like now Arcade One Up's under controlled by somebody else. And we wouldn't know that because there's no public disclosure needed around that stuff because they're not publicly traded. Um, I've watched a lot of the filings on different, you can look up loans when liens, right, to see if different properties have been put up. Arcade One Up had one of those, but it was released in 2023. There's been nothing new since. That was with Bank of America, which means they paid off that note. So there's been nothing else that kind of shows any indication that there's anything more going on. So I would still say take this with a grain of salt. I do think it's got not real credibility, but there's nothing that comes back and says this is fake either. So you just kind of have to take it as it is, as more rumor, but as more and more rumors pop up, you know, you got to start asking yourself, is there smoke? There, where there's smoke, is there fire? Who knows? But it is interesting. If this person is part of their beta and leaked something early, who knows? He has an NDA. But if Friday is indeed the last day for a lot of employees, I would expect we would see and hear a lot coming around that time, as people, take steps to look for new employment or talk about their time, or who knows. We'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. But it is interesting. So I'm not going to keep you guys here. We've already rambled on for a half hour. I do want to thank everybody for being here. Evil Genius. So they have a patent. They have that one utility patent. Presumably, if you were doing an asset sale and the company were to remain alive, that they would retain that patent. But again, I've seen no patent filing changes, no requests from that front. That's what's interesting about what they're saying with, oh, it's the last day is Friday for most people. Like, generally, we would have started seeing filings if they were this close to transitioning to somebody else. I just don't see a company like this just disappear, just shutting down without bankruptcy protection. You're talking about a company that's doing over $100 million a year in sales. Like, they just don't just blink out of existence. Like, they have assets people would want and that they could find. So unless I just don't see that, just, oh, we're just gone, we're just shutting down, sorry everybody, you lose your stuff. Even in a buyout, you would retain a lot of people. So it's unclear too whether this is all of Arcade One Up, um, or if it's just like the beta program, right? Though it does say in this email, Arcade OneUps is closing operations. But who knows? Maybe they just have to shut the whole thing down. Again, just speculation and rumors. Doesn't make any sense to me, because of, I think there's a ton of value still in this company. But obviously I haven't seen their books or anything like that. So will online leaderboards stay up? Like, that's a great question. So that's a lot of good questions, right? None of that is answered here. In fact, in this email, I think it even says, I cannot speak to the future of the brand to share what might be next and whom will be in charge of it, which implies somebody will be in charge of it and there will be a next. Otherwise, they would say, like, we're just ceasing operations. Um, so it's worded really weird because he says they're closing operations and then he says he can't speak to the future of the brand, which implies the brand has a future. I do not know the plans for the arcade systems or the Infinity table. So does the storefront for Infinity game table shut down? Do the systems that run the online gameplay and the high scores, do they just get shut down? Those are all questions, like, I'm sure we all want answers to if they are indeed shutting down. And you would hope there would be an official announcement if they're going to terminate the employment or at least cease operations for people at the end of this week. I would hope we would get a notification sometime in the next 2 days as customers as to what's going to happen to all of our stuff. Again, don't know that this is even true. So treat it as a rumor, until it's, some sort of official statement is made. Um, it, I would be shocked if there was a buyout and they just, in that buyout, like, no employees were part of it. Like, we just literally just want your name, and a few things. I mean, it's certainly possible. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but usually there's some sort of transition right before they just let everybody go. But who knows? So we'll keep an eye on it. I'll update you if I hear any more fun rumors along this front. And again, I urge you to treat this as a rumor. It is just somebody on Reddit who's making a statement saying he's part of the beta team, has an email as part of the from that team. No, doesn't seem to be any kind of other independent verification, with an NDA in place. Would he really go out here and post this like that? Um, it's just totally unclear. So you can follow along out on Reddit, on the Reddit at the Arcade One Up subreddit. And yeah, that's all we got. And yeah, I'm going to repeat that it's a rumor over and over because I want to be clear. But yep. So thanks for coming by, hanging out late on a Wednesday night after Arcades Anonymous and everybody else was done. For some reason, we had to have late night news. So there you go. And I figured going live would be far easier than producing a little video for this. Liquidate your claw machines. James buying the A1UP logo. Cyrus sold to the Saudis for 2 camels confirmed. Well, you never know. So hope everybody has a great rest of your night. And, as we say here, until next time, have fun.